welcome to the Sauti Plus podcast. My name is Mark Chris Kaizi, and I'll be your moderator for today. As we come to the end of April, which is the Sexual Assault Awareness Month, I'm today in the studio with some professionals who we are to discuss with the situation of young people and what exactly young people are doing and the issues that they are suffering with. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, and I think I'll start with my left, the gentleman.
Hi, hey, young people. Um, my name is Ngabo Sad, a peer educator with Reach a Hand Uganda, and also part of the Youth Advisory Committee, and a disability rights activist. And as a young person living with disability, it's a label that I always carry. I want to fight for the rights of young people living with disability. So it is a pleasure indeed to be here.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Sauti Plus once more.
Hi. My name is Patience Kabuga. I'm a programs officer, policy and advocacy here at Reach a Hand Uganda. I'm happy to be here.
Welcome to the podcast. Yes.
Hi. Hi, good evening,
Hello.
good afternoon, or good morning, or some such greeting. I am Tusime Tutu. I am the programs director at Active Youth Africa. I am a human who likes human beings, and well, here we are.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Faith Asinje. I'm the director, Active Youth Africa, mental health advocate, and youth activist. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome to the show,
Thank
Michelle.
Yeah.
As we go into this show, most of us maybe already know what Reach a Hand Uganda does. I would like to start with the team from Active Youth Africa, which in here I think we shall be calling AYA from now.
Yeah.
Please tell us a bit more about what AYA does and what's your work around sexual violence and all that.
Active Youth Africa is, I think the name speaks for itself to begin with. It's youth activist platform that specializes in mental health, sexual assault awareness. We basically create awareness and try to reach as many people as possible. I believe that has been the core value, and our responsibility is to create an environment that is safe for young people, not just us, because I mean, we're millennials now and there's like other generations coming up. So we took the responsibility to go out there and reach as many people as possible, create the awareness that we want to see in our societies and our communities. It was founded in 2021. 2019 was it? Oh,
What, the
yes,
organization?
yes, the organization, yes. 20,
No, the
first run that we did, the first edition that we did for the
Anyway.
Sexual Assault Awareness Month was in 2021,
Oh.
but the organization was founded in 2019. There's 4 of us, but 2 of us are currently representing the other team here, and that's basically it. That's Active Youth Africa for you. We are a platform that aims to reach as many people as possible, just not Uganda, but like the world, the entire world.
Well, thank you. So I guess despite the team of 4 not being here, I believe we are in capable hands.
Yeah.
And in your speech, you mentioned something about the first edition of the Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I think we shall get to know a bit more about that later. So I would like us to start off our discussion already. And I wanted to start with you, Sad. We have seen that sexual violence is something that's really, sexual assault and sexual violence in general is on a rising trend. We have very many young people out there who don't know what's going on, who don't know even some kinds of violations that are going on. And why do you think that is? As a young person's activist, why do you think that the situation is like that?
So, first of all, as a young person, and as an African and as a Ugandan, Uganda as a country is a multicultural. We are a multicultural setting, yes, where in most cases, African culture does not take some, should I say, some forms of violence as violence? Yes. So we are at a crossroad where people, we are, let me say, we are at a place where we are modern but not modern, to simplify it. So I believe one core thing that has played so much, or one core card that has played so much on the rise of sexual violence is culture. Because as as a country, or Uganda as a place, we believe, for example, if let's say I'm married to someone, so once I'm married, it is sealed off. That it means that that person belongs to me. So every time I say that, okay, maybe I want to have sex, that is it. You have no right to say no.
So wait, so you mean if I'm married to someone, I have my husband, I have my wife. I mean, am I not just entitled to, I thought it comes with a package.
Okay, so it is not supposed to be alright, because remember, like, before you go into anything, you have to consent, because
Right.
as a person, you're not always operating on 100%. There are some days, let's say you're in your periods, as a woman, and you're like, okay, today I'm in my periods, I won't have sex. But this man is telling you that, you know what? No, you belong to me. As an African man, I'm entitled to having sex. It is my right. I married you. I paid my cows. Or even at the workplace, someone employs you. They're like, you came here begging, you came here kneeling. So I have the right to do whatever I want to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sad. And these are things that are actually happening. Sad, you introduced something really interesting. You introduced something around negative norms and social culture, harmful stigma, and all that, and how it's, pushing the prevalence of sexual violence and sexual harassment, be it in workplaces, in marriages. So I'd just like to turn to the team from IR. You'll find that very many times people are suffering, they are victims, they are survivors of sexual violence, but they do not have maybe a way to access services, social services, be it a way to report. But also, there's a lot of stigma around reporting. As someone or as an organization that's working around raising awareness on sexual harassment and sexual violence, how do you think this harm can be reduced? I'm speaking about the harm from stigma, the harm from of course, the culture and social norms that we have.
I mean, it goes back to what Ngabo was saying. We have to recognize that sexual violence is a viable, is a criminal form of violence.
Yeah.
Even for just the lay person to recognize that, well, if you're sexually forced into something, that is a form of violence against your person. And I think for us, that's the starting point, to create an awareness within everyone about recognizing violence, recognizing sexual violence as a form of violence, you go against a person's rights to refuse a certain thing. So to reduce or to be able, I think, to tackle it in a just way, or in a way that we achieve justice, we must start at educating and dismantling the culture that
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're a woman and your man forces you to have sex, that is not okay.
Yeah, that is 100% true. I agree. I believe that one of the things that is pushing, or how would I say it? Like, we are pouring more water into rape culture. We're irrigating it basically by framing sex as a basic need. Like, it's a right. Like, you have the right to have sex. Just because we are married does not mean that you are entitled to someone's body at every point in time. So it's this kind of mentality that is fueling rape culture, right? Because it's coercive. It might come off as, oh, like, we're married, therefore, like, you're my husband, I'm your wife. At whatever point you want to get it on, we can just like it doesn't matter what sort of state or mental state the other person is in. So it just goes to show how coercive this kind of mentality is. And I feel that the best way, like she said, to dismantle rape culture is it's on an individual basis, right? It starts with you as a person. We can get on here and have all these conversations about sexual assault and create all sorts of awareness. But if we're not pushing people to look deep into themselves and see, how am I contributing to this problem? How am I adding more salt to an already existing problem? I'm not making the difference that I need to see.
Yeah.
So I strongly believe that for us to dismantle the idea of normalizing rape, for example, in marriages, is if we actively choose to view it from a individual point of view, because we have so many people out here that are not aware of certain mentalities that they carry that could be harmful to their partners or like the community. Yeah, so that's it.
All right. Thank you very much. You speak about something, I think, from both sides, from you, Tutu and Michelle. You mentioned something around recognizing what sexual violence is. Also, Sad, you mentioned, I think, the same point around someone being in a marriage and they don't know what exactly violence is, and if they're experiencing violence, and if there are any implications when it comes to the law. So, Patience, I would like to come to you. As an advocacy officer with Richer Hand Uganda, just simply, I think Michelle has mentioned a few forms of sexual violence that do exist. She has mentioned rape as one of the most prevalent and one of the things that most people will actually recognize as sexual violence. Just maybe, could you paint from a legal background and a legal perspective what sexual violence would look like? What other forms of sexual violence would be? Is it just rape? Do I just come and say I raped someone and that's sexual violence? Or is there anything else that can happen? When I'm married, Michelle, of course, has mentioned that I may be able to choose, but in any way, does the law back me up in case, as a wife, I decided to tell my husband, you know what, today I'm very tired and I don't want to, have any sexual activity? Is that something that does actually exist in Uganda, or are we just here having conversations?
Thank you a lot, Mark. I think that's a good question, because for you to create awareness, there is need for people to know what's legal and not, and for awareness sake to be made, to know that, and don't be caught on the wrong side of the law, even if that the law protects you a certain way. So that's a form of empowerment, I think. The law does actually protect. It's very, very clear when it comes to sexual violence. So there are very many forms of sexual violence. It can be sexual assault, it could be defilement, it could be rape. And there are different elements that come into play with the different forms of sexual violence. But I think important for us to note here is the element of lack of consent. And especially, I want to explain that when there is no consent, there is no consent.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many excuses you can give. And if even lack of consent could be that the person said yes, but they were under duress. Consent could be that the person said yes, but there was another form of coercion, or so.
Right.
If the person has not voluntarily and willingly consented to an act, that's sexual violence. So under the penal code, which is our penal law, it specifies the different forms of sexual violence, and these include rape. But for defilement, and for me, I think this interests me a lot, because when you look at the social cultural context and the gender context, we usually don't think defilement is a thing. And you see that the rape culture that she has mentioned has fueled a lot of other pandemics like teenage pregnancies, because people don't think defilement is a thing. But according to our law, if a person is under 18, they are a minor and they have no legal right to consent. They can never consent. It's the offense if you have sexual relations with a young child or a minor below the ages of 18, be it a boy, be it a girl. you have committed defilement. It does not matter whether they consented or they did not. Now, under there are aggravating factors and other legal things that I don't want to confuse you people with. But
Thank you.
I think important to note is the fact that our even implementing these laws, the government fails to stress it that young children cannot consent.
Yes,
Because you find people
yes.
saying, but she was 15, she went and had sex. She cannot consent.
Yeah.
It is defilement. So we have a problem, especially with teenage pregnancy, where people say these girls are spoiled, how they can't come
Oh,
back.
yeah.
But these girls were defiled. I think for us to, I think I like her point, for us to go back and exercise, even when we're creating awareness, to stress facts that consent can come in when you're 18. When you're below 18, there is no consent. But it also, I think people forget that the way they think, like Shah said, at an individual level, be it as an influence of religion, culture, it goes into the way even our laws are made. So you will find that parliamentarians will stand in parliament and say, when a plane has set off, it cannot land mid-air. So, but this is someone discussing a woman's body
Yes.
and a woman's bodily autonomy and their right to self. But they think of it like in an object format. So you see that if that is a person who is making your laws are going to read a certain way.
Yeah.
And even if the laws read the right way, when it comes to implementation, they will not be implemented the way you want because this is the person
Exactly.
in power.
Yes.
So I think even in awareness, there is need for us to go further and observe the things that more than legal, but also go behind the legal wall and observe the things that make society the way it is, which I think is the gender norms, the social, the cultural, the religious, and look for, like as in a meeting yesterday where they said African solutions. But what African solutions are we picking? Are we picking the negative cultural African solutions, like we call them, or are we actually looking at people, as she said, people as human beings that all have autonomy and a right to self? So yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much, Patience. So we have spoken about how to recognize, what to recognize. To an extent, we have here and there. And usually there's something around reporting. I think that's something we cannot leave behind. We have seen over and over movements come up on Twitter. We have seen, I think, over the recent years, as Michelle mentioned earlier, we are millennials. We've had people say, let's just wake up and shame rapists. And we have seen people say, no, that can't be true. That's someone I know. They can't do that. And then, of course, now there's always the backlash of you are an apologist and you are, all those other things. And so that creates a question around reporting, right? Why are we having the fact that, of course, I'm coming to your side then. Why are we having the fact that young people, young girls, mostly, I'll mention, are out there and they're experiencing all this kind of violence and they're silent to an extent? They are scared to come out. Of course, they will have something to do with stigma. But what then? I'm asking two questions in this. What can we do to increase the reporting? What can we do to make sure that young people are able to come out with a voice? Okay. Then what can we do to see, okay, what position then does information and awareness hold when it comes to reporting and the different referral pathways that we come when it comes to sexual violence? I'll start with you, Sad.
Yes. So I think it all comes back to recognizing. Yes, first of all, these young people don't know who to report to.
Right. Yep.
You get it. You understand. So you realize that, let's say it's an uncle who has maybe defiled you. So how do you go to your mother and say, no, you know what, my uncle has defiled me? We have seen these cases. It has been all over the news.
Yes. Yes.
And you find someone, the teenage mother, but who did it? It is the uncle. And why did it go on? It's because the mother decided to do what? To keep silent. Because the mother is like, okay, now how will community or how will society look at this? It is, okay, there is a thing of saying that, our family is a respectable family, our family is a big family. So that goes, and it's a sin that goes unpunished. So I think first of all we need to, information is power. You get it?
Yeah.
So if you don't know what you're reporting against, if you don't know where to go, if you don't know where to start, for example, you might go to the police.
Yeah.
But how do you start? You don't know that you don't know where to go. You don't know that you have to go to maybe the child protection officer or someone. So I think we need to put that information out there, and that information has to be in a language that young people are able to understand. You understand?
Yeah.
Because we are in a society where very few people have access to things like social media,
Yeah.
things like phones, things like, but we have community, I think called community radio, community radios. So we first need to put that information out there. Then after putting it out there, how are our systems ready to receive these young people?
Yeah.
We have seen it all over the news where the police comes in that, you know what, we are stuck with this girl, we don't know what to do. They were raped or they were defiled.
Shame.
And now we don't know what to do. They are pregnant, we don't know where to put them. So we need to build, first of all, a system
Yeah.
that is able to first work on that problem. So if I've been defiled, then what next? You understand?
Yeah.
What next for me? How do I get back to life? After that, how am I able to get that social psycho support that I need? If it is a counselor that I need to see, when I go at police, am I able to get that counselor?
Yeah.
If it is PEP that I need, am I able to get that PEP there and then? So I think we first need to look at those simple nitty-gritties that make a lot of sense.
True.
Then we can
Thank you, Sad. You mentioned over and over, what next, right? When something happens, what next? And I think we'll have done a disservice if on this podcast we don't discuss what next.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I want to come to you, Michelle. Just briefly, if I'm a young person, just painting a picture, I'm a young person, I'm 18, I've just joined campus, I've met someone I like, we go out, 1-2 drinks, I do not give consent, but they go ahead and probably rape me. What do I do? Just a step by step. What do I need to do? Who do I need to approach? Who else can I approach?
That's a very good question. And this issue that this topic is a very broad topic, right? If we look at like the research and the statistics that show how many, like 5 in 10 women or even more will come up here and say, this has happened to me, I've experienced this. So personally, I do not believe that, and these are my views. I do not believe that I don't believe that the responsibility of tackling this issue should be born like on the backbone of the survivor or the victim, right? So we have all these, here are some tips, get some, go and get to do defensive classes. Like we have all these things that they're throwing at us. But we're forgetting the main issue here is instead of giving victims all sorts of ways to prevent, because I'll say prevention is better than cure, right? And I agree. But for how long? It's so embarrassing, and it puts me in a very despondent state to be here in 2023 having this conversation over and over again. And we're going to just go ahead and say the same exact things over and over. But for every minute, for every second, someone, a child, is being assaulted. A woman is getting raped. A boy is being molested, right? So to get back to your question is, what should they do? I think it all boils down to what education are we giving younger children? Because there's sex education, right?
Yes.
But the sex education that we have in school is very generic, right? Like these are your private parts. This is what you. This is it. It's just that. But they're not teaching and equipping these children with the knowledge that they need to know about their sexuality, like you as a person, right? How to point out some of these things and know this is not acceptable, right? If an older person is talking to me in this kind of way, it's not friendly. They're not being friendly. They're probably grooming me or coercing me to do something.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're playing it safe with kids today. We still have children not knowing at like age 12, parents are still protecting them from knowing,
Yeah.
giving them actual sex education. When he mentioned that so many cases actually of women who have been raped or children, it's by someone they know. It's not a stranger. It's most likely your boyfriend, your uncle, your so many people they actually know. So I believe that before we can get to what should they do, the important question is what do they know?
Yes.
Do they have the knowledge? Do they have an understanding of their environment and of themselves as people? Because look at it this way. If a child is aware of the environment and has this knowledge, it is so easy for that not to happen, as opposed to, okay, here, everything is available. We have classes available for you to learn how to fight. But before it happens, are they aware? Do they have this information about themselves? So, like I said, these are my views, and so many people would disagree. But I feel like these prevention tips are sort of delusional. It's as if they're created in a world in which they're saying rape or assault or molestation is inevitable. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's not the truth. It's happening all the time. So I mean, you could take all the defense classes and still get raped. They can come out here and say things like women should learn to be more modest, right? You caused this, you brought this upon yourself. Many victims will come forward and say things like that. But we have women in hijabs, which is the most modest article of clothing on the planet, and they're still getting raped. So before we tackle what should they do, I strongly believe that before we get to that, we should create an environment in which children, women, and society at large have all the information about themselves, about the environments, because it's easy to discern that way. It's easy to know that the environment I'm in is not safe for me, to have a relationship with, because I mean, like he said, at the police station, mothers don't come forward to talk about these things because guess what? It's her brother who did this, right? So it's at the end of the day, it's not really solving anything. You get what I mean? Like we're not getting the change that we need to see. And I believe that it takes a concerted effort of everyone, and this responsibility should not purely be on the victim.
All right. That's wow. Speaking of things we can do, I am aware that Aya has some work around sexual violence. I remember in the introduction you mentioned something around the Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So at this point, just to let people out there know what's available for them from maybe your organization and other CSOs, I think like Richard Hunt Uganda and other CSOs that we are working with on disability inclusion. So I'll start again from your side, either you Tutu or Michelle. You could just run us through what exactly I is doing and how exactly a young person maybe out there who is undergoing sexual harassment can access, if you have access to services or information, how exactly can I access those? Because most times these things are available out there, but we don't know about them.
Yeah.
These things are available out there, but I don't have a smartphone, despite us assuming that there's a lot of internet penetration here and there. But you'll find that over 60% of people in the rural areas cannot actually access smartphones and the internet. So what exactly is Aya doing, and how exactly can a young person like me or a young person who is listening to this podcast be able to access those services?
What is Aya doing? So we, in 2021, we got it into our heads to somehow try
Take it to
to
the streets.
You went on those streets.
Went on the streets.
Not the streets we talk about.
I know
I-
those ones.
Could be the
well.
streets.
Yes.
Well, but those two, we're coming.
Ah,
Really?
Yeah, we're coming.
Yes. Okay. In 2021, because we were young people without too many resources, and the only place that we could be allowed to say anything that we didn't have to pay for
Yeah.
was the street. So, but in trying to create awareness around sexual assault within the month of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, April of 2021, we had to learn ourselves of what is it that you do?
Yeah.
What happens? You're a grown human being who first of all doesn't recognize violence, and even beyond that, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Even after you recognize that, okay, maybe this would be violence, what do I do?
Yeah.
And weirdly, I got some people, like some friends, speaking up about the situations they'd been in,
Yeah.
but them unsure that those were violent situations.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
And and the person is genuinely not sure that they were violated, which goes back to starting back to the individual.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we got into some research. We wrote an article. We produced an article on this. Talked to there's a forensic specialist in the country,
yeah.
Dr. Onzivua at Molago Hospital. Anyway, not to bore you with information, but I guess information is good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he talked to us about what happens when you do go to report,
Yeah.
when you go to a hospital, for example, because a young person will think that maybe the first, if they manage to get themselves going,
Yeah.
go to a hospital or go to the police.
Yeah.
Now, the police is always a contentious place because, let's face it, we don't have a sweet relationship
Yeah.
with the police. So you're thinking, okay, maybe go to the hospital. And so you go there. And so if you go to a hospital, now this I am saying because we managed to, at least I can just state these processes. So do go to the hospital, go to the police. And we published on our Instagram, Active Youth Africa Instagram,
Yeah.
there's like a small informational sort of flyer. Very interesting work of 2 years back, but it still manages to at least communicate some W's and H.
Yeah.
So you report and they do a test and they carry out a forensic exam and they enter your details in the form, and the form is taken to the police and the police, but you first speak to a counselor,
Yeah.
ideally.
Yeah.
Now, as to whether now the research would have to be whether that actually happens,
Yeah.
right? Which is why we are coming into these information spaces to find out, are we actually facing individuals with the way we ought to be facing them?
True. Yep. Yep.
Have I managed to tell you what I is doing?
Yeah.
You're doing great. Yeah.
So it's information is power. It's okay. This has happened. These circumstances to empower an individual to know, okay, these are violent circumstances.
Yeah.
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 But one, I am not this violence that has been perpetuated right now.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so if now that this is a violent act, what do I do? Where do I go? Maybe I will call a friend and be like, okay, I need your help. Can you help me proceed forward?
Yeah,
Because it's
yeah. Because you need a support system in that
Yeah.
moment. Yeah. Sure.
you do? Because it gets
It's
constricting.
really, really messy. And like, did I cut you short? So like, to just like add on what she said, we as Aya have created a very safe environment
Yeah.
in which our number one priority is to believe the victim.
Yeah.
before we go to doing the tests, the first thing is to believe you. Because while we look at sexual assault as an act,
Yeah.
we quite often forget the impact that it has on the victim.
Yeah.
Because it takes away a lot from that person. Your identity, now you're like, it plants a seed of doubt and shame in this person.
Yeah.
And that's why we always have cases of like victims finding it hard to come forward, right?
Yeah.
Or like, what use is it? They might not believe me. They're not going to believe me. And we've seen this happen so many times.
Yeah.
But as Aya, we have created an environment where we believe the victim first. We believe you. If you come forward to us, I believe you.
Yeah.
And it's on our socials. It's all over. We believe you. Our campaign in 2021 was I believe you. So we started out by putting out the message to take away the victim shaming.
Yeah.
You know? Like, we can't be shaming you for something that actually happened. We can't gaslight you into thinking, you're probably overthinking it. Bro, no. You're not overthinking it. It actually happened.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's like one of the things that we're actively doing, is to believe the victim. And then we, like she'd mentioned quite well, is we push for go get tested and then put in a police report. But now that's where the problem comes in. It's because so many times when they get to that point of like, okay, now you need to actually file a case, they're hesitant, just like,
Yeah.
you know. So it's another issue that we, when we get the time,
Yeah.
we will talk about it, like
Yeah.
how victims find it easy to come forward now, because we've had of, like, remember the Me Too movement, like all of a sudden women were coming forward, and we all dream of a day where women don't have to come forward and say the words Me Too.
Yeah.
That's what we want. But yeah,
Actually,
yeah,
it should not only be women coming out, but also men.
exactly.
Because there is this myth that, for example, rape. Someone can tell you, how do you rape a man? Eh? I've had so many of such questions,
Yes.
and you realize that, okay, these people are facing it. These people are, men are also
They
facing
are,
it.
and
Yeah.
we want
Negative
men
sexual
to be able to come forward
Yes,
and talk
but
about
because of
it.
this myth, because of the society that we are in,
Yes.
that a man is supposed to be strong.
Yeah,
As an African, how do you say that I was raped?
It's how we understand sex.
yeah. I
If
think we're
that's
still
a man-
adhering to a very traditional mindset of a man. We hear this in so many cultures, like msaija, what, you know, those things, like you're almost as if entitled to sex, right? Like it's almost like a birthright. So we have 14-year-olds, 12-year-olds, and much younger boys being exposed to sex and sort of wearing it as a badge of honor of, man, me, I got, like, you know, I got laid. And they just, and you're like, how old were you? 12?
You
You were a child. You were assaulted. And the guy still doesn't see that. Was like, no,
It's cool.
it's cool.
Like
So
I was saying, you're under 18.
Yeah.
Like, go back to recognizing that.
Wow.
right?
This
Yeah.
conversation could go on and on and on, but sadly we don't have a lot of time. But we are always having these conversations via the Sauti Plus podcast, and we are always live on the Sauti Plus TV, and we are always available via the Sauti Plus website and the Richer Hand website to give you information, to make sure you reach out. So from the conversation on what Aya does, you mentioned a lot of information. We give information, we support victims. So as we conclude, how can I contact Aya?
Well, for starters, go to Instagram,
All our socials.
follow our socials.
Yeah.
But do go to Instagram and DM in, but also reach out to,
Our
Me-
contacts are on our socials.
yeah,
We are not that busy.
Yeah.
to confirm.
Yeah, just
We
to
will pick
confirm.
up the
We'll
call.
pick up the call. We'll have this conversation. We'll walk you through it. We are here for you. Like, emphasis on we are here for you. So
So are those socials just at Active Youth Africa, or
yes.
all the way from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn?
Oh no, it's mostly Instagram.
It's mostly Instagram. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So you do know right now where you can find Aya and where you can find the amazing ladies that were with today. If you're a young person out there who is undergoing assault, don't be quiet. come out, speak up. If you know a friend, encourage them to report. If you know a friend, support them. Speak about these things. Knowledge is power, and it starts with you and me.
Look
And
for us. Look for us.
yeah. So maybe as we conclude, I'll go to Patience, then Sad. Um, what is Richard Hunt doing around sexual assault, and how exactly can a young person who is out there benefit from the services of the organization, and or just to reach and get any other support?
Okay. Reach a Hand, first of all, is not only offering the information, but we also ensure that our programming is set in a gender transformative approach way, whereby we are not only providing awareness and information, but we're also contributing to changing the gender narratives in society.
Yeah.
But on the service front, we have a very big database of partners who offer services, especially to survivors of sexual violence. So we use that big database and our peer networks to ensure that we reach survivors of all kinds, to be able to give them help and refer them to the appropriate ways. But also we ensure that we empower young people to know that you have bodily autonomy, but if anything happens, you still have you have your rights. So you could go to these places to report and all these other things, but at the end of the day, you still have your bodily autonomy.
Yes.
So I think more than that, maybe to add on more than that, I know time is out, more than that, I think it's important for us and as Reach a Hand, we do it in our advocacy efforts to ensure that stakeholders, especially government, she has mentioned the fact that most of our approaches, especially CSO and how we give information and awareness on reporting is basically victim-led or survivor-led, but we forget to empower accountability measures and support accountability structures. So I love the Me Too movement, but I feel like they missed a gap of building all that momentum and pouring it into accountability structures and ensuring that the justice system is fixed, the police system is fixed, so that it pours into not international but also other areas. So I think it's imperative that stakeholders know the power they have, the policymakers know the power they have, and the effect of their decisions, but also to ensure that they know that this situation is the way it is because they contribute to it. So you can tell, for example, they've been giving examples of how victims go to police and then they can't report because, and you see that is essentially because our structures have been put in a way of like they are not only incompetent because there is no funding, there are very many incompetences along the way and gaps, but also the people that are in there have their own biases. So Reach a Hand in our advocacy efforts reach out to those people, stakeholders, to not only change their narratives, but also ensure that they understand the power they have, so that when a survivor goes to a police station, they are not sent away, or they are not, the LC1 doesn't call the family so that they marry them off. Or that the policymaker understands that when you pass this law, you're doing this. So with the different SBCC strategies of communication, documentaries, film, we use all kinds of approaches to ensure that everybody knows that everyone has and let me say responsibility to do this and do that. And I also want to mention that people forget that sexual harassment is also sexual violence. It's usually forgotten. So it's also sexual assault. So I think it's imperative that not only do we give information and awareness, but we take what we get from the community, because when you go to give them information, they usually give you evidence back. We take this evidence and use it to build our accountability structures.
All right. Thank you very much. As I come back to you, Tutu and Michelle, to give your parting shots, I think I'll start with SAD. Fun fact, SAD is our YAK representative at Richer Hand Uganda. And as an activist for young people's rights, as an activist for disability inclusion, as we close off this, what are your final remarks? What do you want to say to the young person out there? And what do you say to a young person, mostly maybe living with disabilities? And what can they do about sexual harassment and sexual assault?
to all young people living with disability. First of all, I want to encourage you to be who you are, to be empowered. The world is yours for the taking.
Yeah.
And to also encourage you to speak out. Because when you don't speak out, people won't know that you have a problem.
Right. Yeah.
When you don't speak out, we won't know when and how to help you.
Yeah.
But when you do speak out, eventually you'll get that help you need. Then to also speak, to also maybe call out to all the people out there to listen.
Yeah.
Yes, because before you speak, someone has to give you a
Yeah.
listening ear.
That's true.
Yes, and I think that would be all.
Well, thank you very much, Sad. It was really great having you here. I'll come to you to give your final remarks.
Fighting shots. Speak your mind. Active Youth Africa, speak your mind. That's actually a slogan. What I wanted to say was when she was talking about the work that Rahu does,
Yeah.
and that database that you guys have,
Yeah.
we need access to that database. And by we, I mean the public,
Public.
society. Why? Because people don't know, and
Yeah.
information has to reach the people who would then use that information.
Yeah.
Which is why it was so cool and so important that we came to Raul to when we were working with efforts around sexual assault awareness this year in 2023,
Yeah.
as we prepare for what will be.
Yeah.
Rahul was a space that we could also go to and learn from.
Yeah.
I was reading, and 14,000 cases were registered at police,
Yeah.
but only 200 actually made it to court.
Yeah. That's
Shame.
interesting. That's
I
yeah, the police report. Have been
was
shared.
astounded as
Yeah.
that's not okay, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be the system that she's talking about. That goes back, that makes sure if I report, I need to have access to someone that is going to help me. If there is a lawyer that can help me take this, if there is a security officer, if there is an organization that can take on the responsibility of being the society, then yes,
Well,
that's my part.
thank you very much.
Stand up community for
Yeah.
help.
I think that team at Richer Hand Uganda hears you loud and clear. Yes, Michelle.
I mean, I like to think this is going to get to so many people, right? And given the chance, I can only say that there are no easy fixes, right? There's nothing that can be just easily fixed like immediately. And I've grown to understand that this is something that we cannot fix immediately and just have it gone. But again, I believe that there is hope for a creation of a world in which sexual assault and sexual violence, thank you for teaching me that, can be minimized and completely dismantled, and a safe space for survivors and everyone. I think it is eminently and absolutely possible to create that world. But it starts with you. It starts with looking at yourself as a person and saying, this can happen to me. And if it is capable of happening to me, how am I creating an environment in which it's safe enough for it not to happen to me and for everyone around me? So until we can actually have these conversations with ourselves and create the world that we need to see that is safe enough for us and our children, it will be the year 2050 and we'll still be here having this conversation. So, yeah,
Thank you.
that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Michelle. Yeah. So remember, it starts with you.
Yeah, it starts.
It starts with you again. It starts with you. Speak up. Speak out. Like when someone tells you they are going through something, be sure to believe them.
Yeah.
Again, we shall keep having these. Welcome again to the Sauti Plus podcast, where we talk everything about young people. Be sure to tune in next time. Be sure to reach out via the Sauti Plus Senga if you have any issue that's going on. There's an online platform where you can receive counseling services and can be able to report and be linked to healthcare. And that's the Sauti Plus Singer, which is available via the Sauti Plus app and the Sauti Plus website. Also, be sure to check out our socials at Sauti Plus via Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and also be sure to check out Richer Hand Uganda via all your social medias at Richer Hand Uganda. Thank you and goodbye.